Welcome to the HIT Podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we're dropping into your feed on Tuesdays with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. This week's episode will be no exception. I hope you have as much fun watching this as we had putting it together. We are at the end of another wonderful year. Thank you, 2025. Looking forward to 2026. And what we wanted to do is get out this year with a bit of a compilation of some of our favorite moments from the year. Best conversations, great moments. So put together a bit of a highlight of 2025 that we hope you guys enjoy. And as we round the bend into 2026, hope you guys join us for another slate of amazing episodes. Without any further ado, this week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And let's take a look back at some of our favorite moments from the year.
With the national team, when I was working with US Soccer, we'd do team dinners out, and we'd always do sort of exercises at dinner. So staff would sit with players, and you're sitting with some 18, 19-year-olds. So you're getting a better understanding of like their upbringing, where they're coming from, which was, for me, was really interesting, really powerful. And we always used to go back and sort of talk about the questions that we'd have, because we, trying to find out more about them as people, and like the dialogue and the understanding that you'd have to be able to share with the rest of the coaching staff, then just helps you in terms of, because ultimately you shouldn't, well, in my mind, you shouldn't manage people all the same way. I'm going to
any more than you should parent kids the same way, right?
Yeah,
you have more than one kid, and so do I.
Yeah, like I'm going to coach you differently. I'm going to coach the next person. Just because of now, because I have a good understanding of who you are as a person. So really just get the help with, obviously, everybody, again, being on the same page, and the collective of everyone wanting to move the business, the team forward for the good of everyone. Right.
And that's, maybe I glossed over that too quickly, but to unpack what I meant by it and see if we're on the same page, the reason I don't, talk to every employee the same or parent kids the same is because I think if we really want the message to resonate, then there's a portion of the message delivery that's on the deliverer. You can't put it all on the listener. If you don't tune into the frequency that they best listen at, a certain amount of your message will be lost. And therefore, you need to attune the way that you deliver that message to each individual person so that it's catered into the format in which they ingest it most effectively.
100%. I mean, there's a ton of research out there on that, isn't there? That is, super applicable, and it goes back to, again, just your language that you use and your choice of delivery, maybe how you want to message something to a certain person. Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about trying to be successful and get the most out of someone, or maybe squeeze 1 or 2% more out of them, which can be a big difference sometimes. Or maybe help someone sort of grow in an area that they're maybe not as strong at, that you feel that they have potential, but they don't know that. It's super powerful.
And I'm not trying to get into the science of it, but I imagine it probably literally even taps into a different part of the brain that, like, so when you talk about bad test takers, for example, or people kind of getting put on the spot or whatever, you can like gum up parts of the brain and no longer be able to access it. And it's just giving you your kind of lizard brain or your fight or flight, or if you can work with people to almost open up parts of the brain that need a little bit of water and sunlight, then that's where some things can kind of flow out of sometimes.
Well, let's get into the science, right? Dude. So there's the guy named the Doctor of Flow. His name's Dr. Csikszentmihalyi. He just passed away a couple of years ago, and he was phenomenal. He had this flow chart that basically talked about how when you first join a job, you have no skill, right? And the challenge is really high. So you have a lot of anxiety, right? Yeah. So you have a lot of imposter syndrome. You're like, I don't know if I can do this job. When you've been in a job for so long, you have so much skill, the challenge is now gone, right? So, but he created a flow chart that's like, when you can have your staff have their skill level meet the challenge, right? That's when they're in a flow state. And then what happens to their brain is something called transient hypofrontality. It doesn't sound that complicated. Transient.
No, you don't need to explain it to me, obviously, but just for the audience.
But just for the other people. Yeah. Transient is
I'm stuck on the fact that when you said Dr. Flo, you weren't about to talk about Busta Rhymes. So I have a completely different Dr. Flo in my head.
We could get into Busta. But transient's temporary. Hypo is underactivity. Frontality is prefrontal cortex. Your part of your brain shuts down when you're in flow. And you become highly creative, almost like in that movie Limitless, where you're grabbing all of these ideas from high school, from college, from elementary school.
Basically, what you're going to have to do is review your healthcare, review your insurance. All of them are looking at it right now. How do we need to do this before July? And so I want to encourage them to look at it more broadly. I want to encourage them to look at this process as an opportunity to expand that coverage. When you expand that coverage and you have, for example, your health insurance that is covering the IVF and the preservation, the more clinical side of things, you have to really understand that when you bring in a program like Vesta, again, we're going to be able to help the employees really decide what path is best for them. But more importantly, another issue that I think is important is this financial wellness. So we're hearing a lot about employers wanting to bring in financial wellness and financial education literacy to their employees. A lot of folks don't realize that they probably do, but many people, I don't know the exact percentage, Toby, but I think it's many people really go bankrupt because of medical expenses. I
think last time I looked, it was something like 70-ish% of all bankruptcies are tied to medical.
Right? So do the math. You have an IVF round, which is about $25,000. Then let's say that does not work. Now we have to go and do an adoption, or we would need to do an egg donation and a surrogacy. Egg donation and surrogacy combined, you're talking about $200,000.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the Vesta program does, what our coaches do, is we come alongside the employee and help them to really figure out what is the best path for me. Can we afford it? Our team also comes in and helps them to understand, do they qualify for grants, for example, for the adoption? Do they get the adoption tax credit? What kind of finances do they need to pull together for a surrogacy journey? So we're able to really one of a kind, no one else does this, comes in and talks to the employee and helps them to really understand what that financial path is.
So we're almost like a mobile little gym.
Yeah.
And we end up keeping that equipment at the location so that we're not like hauling it in every time. And it's a little space. So we don't need too much room to keep that equipment, right? So we put it in a little corner of an area, we bring it out for the workout, and then we put it back. It's easy setup, and all you need is a little equipment in order to do this stuff. What I will say is every time we do a workout, I have somebody come up to me or up to a trainer and say, I wouldn't do this if it was just me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the big thing that goes back to
the team thing
and the nudge. Right. Yeah. Like, because a lot of people would be like, I wouldn't do this on my own. But since you're there and you're holding me accountable and I know other people are going to be there, I want to be there.
Yeah.
And so that is just having a facilitator to do that and bring them to the actual place. Because what I will say is people could drive to a gym that may be 10, 15, 20 minutes away, but that's an extra 10, 20, 15 minutes.
It also turns out they don't.
Exactly.
They could. They could grow wings and fly out of this room too, but it just doesn't happen.
100%. And it's just like one of those things where you're just like, guys, we have to meet people where they're
100%.
And that's where we're really trying to be innovative and like, hey, we can make this work. But we have to be able to get the, buy-in from the people first. And because everybody at the beginning has questions. They're like, do people really come to these workouts? And they do.
Things have changed a lot. I think it's kind of prudent to back up a little bit. And rebates were actually something a very large client told Express Scripts 30 years ago to go do. And so the story I had heard in the industry was that Home Depot went to Express Scripts and said, you need to continue to lower drug costs. And they were like, well, we've done everything we can against the pharmacies. They're paying us 80%, discount on some of these medications. What else do you want us to do? And they're like, figure it out or we're firing you. Yeah. And so Express Scripts went out to the manufacturer and says, we need more money for the drugs.
By the way, rebates starting with the washer dryer salesman is great because that was just my analogy.
That's the story I heard. So
right.
Yeah. Whether or not that's lore. Yes, lore, PBM lore. Yes, I love it.
When you guys sit around the PBM campfire and you tell PBM ghost stories, this is the PBM.
There are so many lineage stories in the PBM industry. I can't even begin to. We could talk hours for
this is why I want to do the podcast. Right. Conversations like this happening behind the scenes that we need to heat up cameras for.
But if you are an employer and you know you don't have people who are work authorized, you should be really hesitant and cognizant of it. The government has stated that they're looking for companies to go after where the company knowingly has 15 unauthorized employees for criminal prosecution. So that means the company owner, HR representatives could potentially be criminally responsible for that. And, there's a lot of people who, there's things where employers and employees are sort of knowingly in on I won't call it a scam, but a process where perhaps employees aren't presenting totally authentic documents and they look authentic enough. So the company says, we've looked, they look reasonably authentic. We filled out an I-9. But if you know in your heart of hearts that they don't pass muster, then you should be saying, do we really want to keep these employees around?
So is that going back to the criminal prosecution?
It could be, yes.
That's wild. So these employers, like you said, even if like they're presented something that, like you said, you got to squint a little, but hey, what am I supposed to be, some official on what these documents are? Like,
yeah, so I mean, you have to be careful. I want to be careful. Like, most employers are not going to be subject to criminal prosecution because you'd have to say the employer knowingly accepted documents they knew were false. So they'd have to prove that. So, but if there is any kind of paper trail or there's a whistleblower employee who might know who has an accident, then absolutely.
And you're saying this goes all the way up to leadership and potentially even HR and has criminal ramifications.
Correct.
That's chilling.
Right. And by and large, most employers aren't doing this.
By and large, this is why everyone's leaving HR.
I think the value of a traditional insurance network perhaps goes away or at the very least dilutes in its value proposition. So I have Aetna, I have Blue Cross, I have Cigna, whatever. I think all of those have so much overlap in the network, the doctors within that network, and they have this huge variance in reimbursement rates for the exact same procedure in the exact same location that they're illogical. And that's ultimately what the big carriers are selling is their network in their discounts. So I think most people understand that those things don't really have the same value as they originally had. And so what you'll likely see replaced with is high-performing narrow networks, direct contracts, open source direct contracts, et cetera, where employers don't have to worry about who their carrier is, and employees don't have to worry about is it in network or out of network. They just know the cost ahead of time. And that will be sort of facilitated by advancing of technology. And I think impetus from employees to demand that.
So I left New York. I left the toy industry. I bumped into a job in San Francisco, or San Francisco Bay Area. I live in Oakland. I bumped into a job on Craigslist.
That's amazing.
Teaching kids engineering with Lego.
Okay.
But it was a job playing with toys for a living. Yeah. And we took it from 7 people to 400 people.
Wow.
It became the largest Lego-inspired STEM organization in the U.S. We were teaching 100,000 kids a year. I was doing it for so many years that we were in Silicon Valley that we got the attention of all the tech companies, Google, Amazon, Adobe, PayPal, all that. So I started running team building events with them for the next decade.
It's amazing.
And I realized even though they were considered the best companies in the world, a lot of them were not fun places to work.
Yeah.
So back in 2019, I created Rediscover Your Play to actually bring more play to the workplace and make work not suck so much.
I hope on your birthday, everyone around you says that God bless us for living in this world with you. The fact that you are in this world and we get to be in it. May there be more of you, ever more of you.
Well, because we're at work 40 hours a week. We're at work 2,000 to 2,500 hours a year. Yeah. Some of it doesn't have to suck. How do we bring some play or fun? And I even argue that you make more money.
So that margin exists anytime I'm going to give an insurance company my risk. And when we think about risk, that's our claims. Claims, when we're trying to express them, they're kind of just two things. How much and how many, right? How much does the MRI cost, and how many people are going to get an MRI next year. Those are my claims, my how much and my how many. So if we break claims into how much and how many, and what we know about the insurance companies are that they're never going to price our risk for what's likely to happen, then maybe we can put all our risk out on the table. We can be thoughtful about the design of our group benefits so that we're not overpaying where we don't need to, because we want to be good stewards of sitting in the chair of our benefits. So as we look to sort of allocate the risk, who's going to take what am I going to ultimately put back in my little risk box to give into the cart to push over to the insurance company, that where I've arrived at pricing that I think is the right mix of risk. I'm not just giving it all away, I'm looking at it thoughtfully to see the risk and the pricing and who ends up holding what part of the risk.
Well, this is an interesting year that we're in, right? I mean, this is a very relevant podcast. You're talking about things that are happening right now. And so with that in mind, the political environment is wild and madness and wow. And we'll see how that plays out for all the organizations that are listening and watching in their regulatory environments, and what that means moving forward, and some of the actions that they'll have to take in each of their individual states in lots of different areas. So we definitely have our finger on the pulse in that regard, in thinking about what's going to happen with DEI, what's going to happen with some of our other consumer protections in financial services specifically. So there's a lot of discussions around that. One of the things that I have been on a soapbox about lately is the sensationalized news that we have.
Yeah.
And as you know, is
in either direction, by the way.
Yeah. In every direction, yeah. Exactly. And sometimes wildly made up, right? And it's not even like a political conversation we're having now. It's just more of how do you navigate and actually find facts? So as an organization, if I need to execute on something, or you hear about something, where do you go to actually get the facts? And that's difficult.
That's all the time we have for you on this week's episode. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Excel Health, Rula, TrueHue, Montage Insurance Solutions, the guys keeping the lights on. We're blessed to be here. We appreciate you guys so much for watching. Join us next week. Join us every week. Join us in the new year. And until next week, make this the best week yet.